All right, another video, this one in a strange location. Let me button up. This is a festive time. It is July 1st, 2024, and I am in Okinawa, Japan at a resort, hence the yellow threads and the orange walls. Right? That's what's happening. Spent a lot of time at the beach. Had a lot of time to read, and the book I read was The Blade Itself, the first book by Joe Abercrombie in the First Law trilogy. Now, I must confess, I had read the trilogy before, many moons ago. I read it in 2019. I read them in 2019, and I read them straight through. First, second, third, all the way through. I was on a submarine, and I had the time, and I blasted through it. Now, at the time, I had already read Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, but I had no idea what Grimdark was. I had no idea what any of that was, right? I just picked it up because I saw it popped up in like a Kindle recommended or something like that. I don't even think I was using Kindle at the time. I was using like Apple Books. Anywho, to make a long story short, I read it. I was not expecting Grimdark, and I got Grimdark. And the Grimdark that I'm talking about isn't the blood, guts, and gore. Like, I was fine with that. It was and as I remembered, and I may be wrong in my memory, but it was the, like, things don't matter portion of Grimdark. Like, everything is just mud and blood and nothing more really is there. And I think, and I remember, and as I read through this book, I get to the end, and they're about to go on this big long journey to the end of the world, and I remembered them going on the journey, some things happening. Luthor gets like his face cut up, maybe, and that's all I remember happening on that end. But then they get to the end and like nothing happens. It was like all for nothing, and I remember that just sticking in my mind since 2019 as being just something I'm pissed off by. And I stayed away from all of Joe Abercrombie since finishing all three. I remembered something else, but I'll get to that when that pops up. But on reading this book, I was very impressed, and I was impressed in a lot of ways. You know, trying to take away, I read it again, obviously, the first book again, and I wanted to go as clear as possible, and I forgot most of it, so that was good. And I was pleasantly surprised a lot by the characters. So Logain was everything that he was supposed to be. He was, an old warrior, scarred by many battles, many victories, many losses. He felt real. He wasn't, he wasn't the hero. He was just, he was a boogeyman. That's what he is, right? He's a boogeyman who is without a cause right now, who thinks all of his buddies are dead. Yeah, so him as a point of view was really cool, just because it was interesting to be in that headspace of not the hero, but the villain from a bunch of different stories, and not like he was the villain from the stories of some, plucky farm kid from the north. He was that villain, but he's a good guy now, sort of. Good guy is kind of weird. It's weird in this book. Good guy doesn't really fit. You have Glocta, which is the torturer of the Inquisition, and you root for him just because he's so down. He's so down with his crippling, everything is crippled, right? His legs just mashed, his teeth are all messed up, so he has to eat like oatmeal all day, all of his meals. He can't chew anything because this was really sick. They didn't pull his teeth, they like left half the teeth, so he was just always pain, and he couldn't bite anything. Awful stuff. He was fun to root for just because he was so down. And he did terrible things. Lots of torturing, lots of like forcing people to confess to things they didn't do, but whatever. It was an interesting read and an interesting point of view that I am not used to. And this is, I'm guessing, why this book has been so popular and has spawned so many books for Joe Abercrombie, not just because he's a great writer, which I do, in fact, believe that now. He's just so solid reading this book. It's really solid. My memories from the past did not give me that. And I must have been in a weird headspace too, honestly. But if it does, we'll get to that. But my headspace was really weird. I'm much less on a submarine now, so I don't think I'm burdened with that. Also, we go to West, who I put West down, and I thought of that as like a chapter into it. I was like, okay, this is the hero in the next chapter. So like the first book would be this commoner coming up from nothing and making a name for himself in the Empire, with having a weaker blood kind of thing, and not being of nobility or noble stock, and making something for himself, being the first in the breach, right? That kind of thing. Now we're with him a chapter later, and he's like beating up his sister. He's struggling with bureaucracy. He is dealing with the higher ups. He's dealing with the officer corps, right? Who just do not put any stock in him because of his shortcomings, which are not his fault, right? So that was interesting to see that. That was kind of the vibe that I got from this book, is all these characters are a little bit shifted from the trope, the typical trope, and that's what I really liked. You also have Pharaoh, I think her name was. She wasn't there often. I'm just mentioning point of view characters. We have Pharaoh, which wasn't there very often, and she didn't show up until like the latter half of the book. She was cutthroat, she was unforgiving, but you saw a little bit of, with Yulwei, kind of being a mentor-ish, but not. I wouldn't put him in that category. Kind of like just a guide getting her places. She used him, but he was more than happy to let that happen. But she has a little bit of light coming from her choices of not stabbing West, right? Or not killing that Gherkin soldier that was around the fire that she could have easily killed, right? That kind of thing. So maybe she's getting better. Who knows? You have Dog Man, who just smells really well, I guess. One of Loghain's band of named men. It was cool to see what they were up to. Really good little skirmishes in woods there as they were trying to warn people in the north of the Flatheads coming. And then you have Luthar, right? I think Luthar, and he's just a pompous asshole. He's what every enlisted sees the officers being is him, and he played that part great. I didn't care for him having a relationship too much with Ardy, West's sister. I didn't really care at all about that plot point, but I liked him just being a pompous asshole and getting having really funny conflicts being based off of him being a pompous jerk and asshole. I really like that. You don't have to like the character, like want to have drinks with him, right? Or look up to him to like the character, right? And it's very awesome to see like a book filled with that, and filled with those kind of people and still want to read, right? That's a big learning experience for me, and I really like that. I really like that a lot. Overall, like the world itself, I'm not like crazy jumping into. I kind of get it. I don't know. They mention it a few times, and you're supposed to get it. Obviously, the north is the north, and then north of north is like Flathead Mountain territory, I guess. You have the west, I think, is being the old empire, which is a bunch of fighting. The east, who knows? Maybe there's isles of something. Who knows? And then the south is Gurkle, maybe. And then the Union is in the middle. Bunch of states who are unionized. So that's interesting, I guess. I haven't seen a map, nor do I really want to look at it right now. I'm just along for the ride and just try to remember what I can. Again, I read this now while I'm on vacation and having a good time. Maybe that's the best time and place to read Grimdark. Where I read it the first time, I was in a very grim and very dark place, physically and mentally, on a submarine. So that was when the one and only time I've had the time to sit down and read Brandon Sanderson. I read the first 3 Stormlight Archives books because that's what was out then, and I enjoyed them, and it was, much more upbeat, optimistic fantasy. And I read these, I think, either right before or right after I read those. I read this trilogy, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this is too dark. I don't, and things not mattering, like, I don't need that in the place that I am currently, which on a submarine, right? So that definitely affected me then. And maybe for those who love grimdark, I don't know. Maybe it was just me. Grimdark was not something to read while on deployment in a dark place. That is, I'm thankful that A, that time of my life is over, and B, I get to maybe enjoy some Joe Abercrombie finally, and some grimdark, which I have been avoiding, really. But that's it. As for the book, I would give it a solid 8.4, maybe. Felt like not enough happened. Honestly, not enough happened. I wasn't crazy excited from page to page. The characters drug me through, but the plot itself, I wasn't like really invested in, to be honest. I do like the threat of the Flatheads coming down and the threat of the wars that are on the Union's borders. However, the inner politicking that kept happening, I just didn't care about, and dealing with Union people, didn't care about. So I would give it an 8.3, 8.4. Great writing, great characters, meh plot so far. But again, characters are massive. So yeah, that's it. I will continue on to the next book in the series. Yep. All right, on to the next one.